historic conflicts.
7:55 a.m., December 7th, 1941. A peaceful morning on the Hawaiian island was suddenly shattered by thunderous explosions. Japanese warplanes roared across the skies of Pearl Harbor, unleashing bombs and chaos. The battle lasted less than 2 hours, but it changed the world forever. This wasn't just a surprise attack. It was a turning point that led the United States into World War II and reshaped the global order. Join us as we uncover the story behind Pearl Harbor, a day forever remembered as a date which will live in infamy in American history. Before the bombs fell and the harbor burned, tensions had been quietly building for years. In the 1930s, Japan began expanding aggressively across Asia, invading Manchuria, then launching a full-scale war in China. Their ambition was clear: to dominate the Pacific and create a vast empire fueled by resources like oil, rubber, and steel. But one obstacle stood in their way: the United States. America had major interests in the Pacific and strongly opposed Japan's expansion. In response to Japan's invasions, the U.S. froze Japanese assets and imposed crippling trade embargoes, including a vital cutoff of oil exports. Faced with a shrinking fuel supply and rising pressure, Japan made a fateful decision. Rather than back down, they would strike first, and strike hard, hoping to neutralize the U.S. fleet before it could ever fight back. Their chosen target? Pearl Harbor. At exactly 7:55 a.m. on December 7, 1941, a quiet Sunday morning in Hawaii erupted into chaos. Out of the rising sun came hundreds of Japanese warplanes, diving through the clouds and unleashing a brutal surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor. Explosions rocked the harbor, battleships burned, and the sky was filled with smoke and fear. In less than 2 hours, over 2,400 Americans were killed, and the Pacific Fleet was left in ruins. But this was more than just a military strike. It was the spark that pulled the United States into World War II. From that moment forward, the course of history would never be the same. This is the story of Pearl Harbor, a day of destruction, sacrifice, and a turning point that changed the fate of the world. In secret, the Japanese Imperial Navy began preparing one of the most audacious surprise attacks in military history. The architect behind the plans was Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, a brilliant strategist who had studied in the United States and understood America's industrial power. He knew that if war broke out, Japan had to strike a crippling blow early or lose everything. His solution was bold: a sudden, all-out airstrike on the U.S. Pacific Fleet stationed by Pearl Harbor. The operation was codenamed Operation Z. In late November 1941, a fleet of 6 aircraft carriers set sail under complete radio silence, heading east across the Pacific. Aboard them were over 350 warplanes, bombers, torpedo planes, and fighters, all meticulously trained for one purpose: to destroy Pearl Harbor in a single decisive blow. The Americans never saw them coming. At 7:55 a.m. on December 7, 1941, the silence over Pearl Harbor was shattered. Dozens of Japanese planes roared down from the sky in perfect formation. Within seconds, bombs and torpedoes rained down on the anchored American fleet. Battleships exploded. The USS Arizona was torn apart by a massive blast, killing over 1,100 men instantly. The USS Oklahoma capsized, trapping hundreds inside. On land, American airfields were also targeted. Planes were destroyed before they could even take off. The first wave hit hard. The second wave came just 45 minutes later, finishing off what was left. Sailors scrambled for cover, fought back with rifles and anti-aircraft guns, but the attack was devastating and swift. In less than 2 hours, over 2,400 Americans were dead, nearly 200 aircraft destroyed, and the pride of the Pacific Fleet lay in ruins. And yet, Japan had missed a critical target. The U.S. aircraft carriers were not in the harbor that day. They had escaped destruction. A surprise attack had succeeded, but not completely, and it would awaken a sleeping giant. The day after the attack, the United States was no longer a neutral nation. On December 8, 1941, President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed Congress in a speech that echoed across the world. Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked. His words were powerful. The nation was stunned, angry, united. In just hours, Congress voted almost unanimously to declare war on Japan. Across America, young men lined up at recruitment offices. Factories shifted overnight to wartime production. For many, the attack on Pearl Harbor was personal. It wasn't just the loss of ships and lives. It was a violation of peace, of trust, of safety on home soil. But the response wasn't just emotional. It was massive. The United States, once hesitant to enter the global conflict, was now fully committed. And within days, Germany and Italy declared war on the U.S., pulling America into World War II on all fronts. Pearl Harbor wasn't just a military disaster. It was the spark that launched one of the greatest mobilizations in human history. Pearl Harbor was more than a sudden tragedy, but it was a turning point that reshaped the course of history. Before the attack, the United States stood on the sidelines of the global war. After it, America became the driving force behind the Allied victory in World War II. For Japan, the attack was a tactical success, but a strategic mistake. By awakening the industrial and military might of the United States, they had set into motion a response they could never truly overcome. From the ashes of Pearl Harbor came a nation transformed, one that would go on to fight across Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific, and eventually emerge as a global superpower. Today, the wreckage of the USS Arizona still rests beneath the waters of Pearl Harbor, a silent grave for over 1,000 sailors. Above it stands a memorial, not just to those who died that day, but to the moment the world changed. Pearl Harbor reminds us of the cost of unpreparedness, the danger of underestimating your enemy, and the power of unity when a nation stands together. It is a story of loss, courage, and resolve. A day of infamy, yes, but also a day that lit the path toward victory. Thank you for respecting history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and write the bell so you don't miss any battles.